Welcome to the Starter Girlz podcast, your ultimate source of inspiration and empowerment. We're here to help women succeed in every area of their lives: career, money, relationships, and health and well-being, while celebrating the remarkable journeys of individuals from all walks of life who've achieved amazing things. Whether you're looking to supercharge your career, build financial independence, nurture meaningful relationships, or enhance your overall well-being, the Starter Girlz podcast is here to guide you. Join us as we explore the journeys of those who dare to dream big and achieve greatness. I'm your host, Jennifer Loehding, and welcome to this episode. Welcome to another episode of the Starter Girlz podcast. I am your host, Jennifer Loehding, and wherever you are tuning in today, we are so thrilled to have you. And so let's talk a little bit about what's happening today. My guest is a dynamic, accomplished individual with an impressive journey through academia, leadership, and law. From her early days at Columbia University, where she was recognized as Student of the Year, to her current studies at Harvard Law, she has built a legacy of excellence, mentorship, and community impact. So you guys are going to be in for such an awesome treat today. I'm so excited to chat with her. She's a young college student, which I think is so fun to bring different people on here and hear her perspective and what she's pursuing and just all the amazing things she's done up to this point. And so you guys are going to get to hear from her in just a few minutes. But before we do that, I do need to do a quick shout out to our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Walt Mills Productions. Need to add excitement to your YouTube videos or some expert hands for editing? Look no further. Walt Mills is the solution you've been searching for. Walt is not only your go-to guy for spicing up content, he's the force behind a thriving film production company with numerous titles in the pipeline. Always on the lookout for raw talent, Walt is eager to collaborate on film and internet productions. With a background deeply rooted in entertainment and promotion, Walt Mills leverages years of skills to give you the spotlight you deserve. Want to learn more about Walt and his work? Head on over to waltmillsproductions.net and let your content shine. All right. And with that, Danielle Mikaelian is a Columbia University graduate, the BA in English Literature, and is now in her final year at Harvard Law School. She's held leadership roles in numerous organizations, served as an editor for multiple academic journals, and worked on legal projects spanning business, entertainment, and human rights. A published poet and dedicated mentor, she's also been recognized with prestigious scholarships and leadership awards, including the Miss JD Limitless Leadership Award, making her the only law student nationwide to receive this distinction in 2024. Passionate about law, mentorship, and empowering the next generation, she's set to embark on a career in transactional law in New York. So, Danielle, welcome to the show. We are so excited to have you here, and I'm excited to chat with you and learn about your journey.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's going to be so much fun. So as I mentioned in the beginning, it's always, I love it when young people come on a podcast, because I think for a couple reasons, because I think so many, not just your generation, but people as a whole have a fear of talking, right? Like they have a fear of getting in front of people and speaking. And whenever I see young people actually emerging and doing those kinds of things, I get excited. And so for our guest, so you know, Danielle had actually reached out to me and asked to be a guest on the podcast. And this is no lie, every day I get multiple requests for people to come on this show. And most of these people are agents that are trying to find shows for their people. And so I look at those and I go, okay, well, I got another one. Here's another one. Here's another one. But when I get somebody that actually writes me themselves and says, hey, I want to get on your show, those are the ones I want to read. Those are the ones that I want to talk to, because they've taken the time to actually investigate and do the work and look to see, hey, is this a show that I even have something to offer? And does it fit in the line with what I'm doing too? So Danielle, I want to commend you on that. And I just want to share that with our audience so they know that, hey, you went out and you did this on your own. Nobody did this for you. And I love that about you.
Thank you so much. I think it's good always being proactive, and it never hurts to put yourself out there. You just have to be prepared for a positive or negative response. But if it's negative, you just move on from there and you continue your journey.
Yeah. And the thing is if you don't put yourself out there, you already have your answer, right? You already have the no. And so if you don't ask, and it's funny, like I said, because I get these requests every day, and it's so funny. These people will write me they'll be in all my emails. They're in all of them, the same people. And I'm I'm seeing them everywhere and I just can't keep up. So anyways, I am so glad that we got to chat and we get to get you on here and talk about what you're doing because you have an impressive journey. And I think you're a remarkable leader, mentor, and just a really great somebody for other young people to look up to and say, hey, look, there are amazing young people out here doing great things in the world and making a difference.
Thank you. That's so kind.
So awesome. All right. So let's talk about you. Let's talk about what is going on because you are in your stretch here in law school. So tell us like what you're working on right now. What's happening in Danielle's world?
So I am in my last semester of my studies at Harvard Law School. It has been a long journey to get here. I feel like I've been in school my entire life. And right now, I'm finishing up my classes and all the requirements to graduate. I'm cross-registered at Harvard Business School. I'm still actively involved on campus. One of my big roles is serving on the executive board of the Harvard Association for Law and Business, which is our law school business club, just because I really do believe a lot of learning occurs outside of the classroom. And in that regard, I've always strived beyond my studies to be very proactive with campus leadership and to get involved in all these organizations. And then beyond that, you mentioned the award I won from Ms. JD. So I will be flying out to their gala in April in San Francisco to accept that award. I'm also going to Singapore with the Law School Business Club over spring break because we do an international trek every year to immerse ourselves in a more international community and gain a more globally minded sense of just businesses out there and opportunities out there. So that's been a great opportunity as well.
I love it. Well, I want to back up just a little bit because I want to know if you've always been like this because I think that there are some people that are just really driven and focused. And for to me, you seem extremely focused on what you need to get done. Like you look at something and you're like, I need to have this done kind of mindset. And I get that because I'm in a lot of ways, I'm like that too when I get hyper, not near as hyper, like not at your age. I was nowhere near like that. But I will tell you now, as a grown up, I feel like when I get hyper focused on something, I'm like, no, this has to be done. I got to get it done. And I get very frustrated when I don't. So I'd love to back this up a little bit. Tell me, were you like this, like when you came out of mom's womb, like from day one, just always had this discipline and determination?
I've always been fairly determined and I've been a go-getter. I will say when I was really young, I think I was a little more introverted. I was that elementary schooler that just adored reading and would actually prefer reading to people. I kind of make that joke because when I was in elementary school, I would read under my desk. That's how much I loved reading. And that love of reading never faded. I just again started to prefer people more and became an extrovert over time and ended up using that love of reading to major in English at Columbia so many years later. But I've always been at the top of my class academically. I've always been very driven. I was a middle school valedictorian, a high school valedictorian, and
Wow.
all of those things.
Yeah.
So I think I have always had very high goals for myself, and I just recognize certain sacrifices have to be made along the way to get there. And for me, academic achievement was my way of opening these opportunities, and it worked out over time, right? Because I was a public school student that really had no real thought that I would end up at two Ivy League schools. This has solely occurred just as a result of merit and drive. So.
Yeah, I love it, Daniel. I think it's awesome. Now, do you have siblings?
I do have two siblings. I have two younger brothers who are identical twins.
Okay, so you are the oldest. I don't like to ever say somebody reminds me of something. You sort of kind of remind me of my oldest daughter a little bit. She was always, so I have three kids too. And my oldest she's now 29 and she's actually just got her first job as a bilingual fourth grade teacher. She's completely fluent in Spanish. Nobody in our house spoke Spanish. There's not a bit of Spanish heritage in my family, but she was always from a very early age, was always reading. In fact, I have this story that I tell that we were in the bank line. She was 4 years old and I had put her in it was kind of like a Montessori type school. I had a girlfriend, her daughter was going there at the time. And so we decided to put the girls in together. I had no idea that Kara was reading as early as she was. And one day we were sitting in the drive-thru at the bank and I'm putting money in the bank and she's in the back seat with my middle child, who's now 24. She was a baby, and Kara was reading a book to her. And I stopped and I said, are you reading that? And so I remember pulling the book back and like flipping the paper and saying, tell me what that says. And she started reading to me the book. I had no idea this kid could even read at this age, but they had been teaching them the alphabet and how to read, and they had done these whole letter books and everything. And so she has always been that kid reader, like just always loved, still to this day, loves reading. And the funny thing was when she went to college, she kind of took a detour. She went to UNT, got a scholarship, and then she dropped out, got married. And then all of a sudden she comes to me one day and she's like, I'm going back to school to finish my degree. She finished her 2 years in education in like 6 months. Like seriously, within 6 months to a year, finished her testing, did everything, went and took the state testing, and now we're mid-year in the school year, and she just got her first job as a bilingual teacher, you know? And so you just kind of, when you're telling about these academia things, y'all are completely different. I'm not diminishing. You've done incredible things, but I that's why I was asking, are you a firstborn? Like I wanted to know where you were in this because I see a lot of like just similarities in the drive and that, yeah, that determination. And I love it. I think it's great. So kudos to you.
Thank you so much. And I know we haven't touched upon this yet, but I think really working so hard throughout my life and having those opportunities and seeing where they've been able to get me is one of the reasons why I ended up doing college admissions consulting work. So for anyone tuning in, I've been working in the college admissions space for the last 8 years, and I
Yeah,
began at the year I started at Columbia University just because for me, that's my way of opening those doors for the people that come after me. And whether it's improving an essay or helping someone secure an internship or just giving general advice, those college opportunities are really defining your future and what opportunities you're going to have post grad and down the line.
yeah, I agree. And let's talk about that a little bit because that's obviously an area that you're well versed in and you're doing it and you're passionate about it. It's funny when I do these shows, you know, I always can tell kind of what the area is, like what is it that people are really driven to. And you have so many things you're doing, but I know this is a big area for you. So tell us a little bit about this. Or is this position like these kids are coming in? Are you seeking them out? They coming to you? How does this all work for you?
I've worked in a variety of different roles. What had happened was originally when I was at Columbia, I started turning to online forums like Reddit to find people who needed this type of help and insight. And this is in addition to my own personal mentorship efforts throughout the years. I've just helped a lot of people on the side. And
Sure.
that's just me genuinely offering my time. Often those are members of the Armenian community. I'm ethnically Armenian, and we just haven't had much representation as a minority group
Sure.
at top schools. So it's been really important to me as someone who's managed to achieve that to give back to my own community. But I started on Reddit, started editing essays, all these different things. And then upon graduating from Columbia, I took one gap year. It was during the heart of COVID. So
Yeah.
in-person opportunities were a little more limited then.
Right.
And I actually began working for almost 10 different companies as an independent contractor, and they were all in the education consulting space. So I was doing everything from teaching international students about the different colleges and how to make that transition through webinars to acting as a writing coach for students in China and helping students in Romania through a different company. And then one of the companies that I really enjoyed was a college consulting company based in the US. They're based in San Francisco. And this company has just done amazing. They have like 20 million in venture capital funding. It's a very tech-enabled platform where students can send in essays and get feedback from a member of our team within 24 hours. So it's not just working with a counselor, you also have like this additional support, the additional resources. And I enjoyed working with them so much that I actually started my studies at Harvard Law School and continued to work for them part-time. And I'm doing that to this day.
Wow, that's awesome. Good for you. And you're so busy. I love it. You're just a busy girl. Can't get in trouble when you're busy, right? Keeps you focused and grounded. That's what I always tell my kids. If you're too busy to get in trouble, you just stay busy. I
Absolutely.
love
And
it, Danielle. I love it. So I had another question and then I dropped my brain went frozen and it does that sometimes when we're on these shows. That's what I love about podcasting is that we can just chit chat. We don't have to worry about being perfect all the time, right? Like if you do everything live, you always feel like you got to have it all perfect. When we do this, it's great. We get to relax a little bit. So cool stuff. So you're going to be finishing up here and then you're going to go into transactional law. Did I get that correct when I introduced that?
yes, so coming into law school, I'm the first to be lawyer in my extended family. So I really had to figure out what path I was going to be pursuing. And in that regard, one of the things I did as a first year was one of the most difficult positions you can get as a first year summer as a law student is a position at a big corporate law firm.
Mm.
And it's pretty much unheard of. There definitely are positions, but they're just very competitive. So I basically applied to every single firm in New York. And then beyond that, I applied to additional opportunities across the country. I had like a very clear list, and I would just write down applied to this one, applied to this one, and these are the ones I have to still apply to. And I would just keep going through that list and marking off the names. And somehow, fairly late in the process, I received a call from a New York law firm saying, we're going to give you this opportunity.
Wow.
And that was my first exposure to the type of law firm I'm now going to. But I felt very privileged to have that opportunity as a first year. And again, it's that general mentality, put yourself out there, at least try. You never know if you don't try. It only takes one. And I decided to go to a different firm my second year summer, really enjoyed it there, and I'm now headed back to that same firm
That is
after
so awesome.
graduation.
Well, and there's something to be said about this. I mean, talking just about this, putting yourself out there, because, I don't know where I saw this, but, they were talking about how, like, when women go to apply for a job, if they're missing any of the qualifications, like, they won't apply, and men will just apply. If they think they got some of them, they'll go apply for the job, right? And so I think there's something to be said about this, because I'm thinking about, like, how you went to all of these different companies and just put yourself out there, and you were vulnerable, and you put yourself out to say, hey, I may get told no, but maybe somebody's going to say yes in there, right? There are so many people who never, if you think about this, or just won't put themselves out in these positions because they're afraid of that no, right? Like, they're afraid of that, and I got this thing flying, like a bug flying in front of me, like, get out of here. Like, they're just afraid to put themselves out there to get that possible no. And I like that you're just, like, you're saying, okay, I'm not going to put all my eggs in one basket. I'm just going to go out there and do a lot and see what comes back.
Absolutely.
I love it. I love it. Anything, so, and I would love maybe for somebody listening to this, because some young person may get a hold of this and be like, okay, this girl's just, disciplined, got it going on. And clearly you've had setbacks. We all do. It's just life. If you have it, they're coming, right? I would say they're always around the corner. What have been, you feel like maybe some of the challenges for you, trying to pursue this? Is it just been like, staying focused, or have there been some blocks that have come up for you?
I definitely think with my type of approach, you have to always be anticipating rejection. And I definitely have experienced probably more rejection than the average person as a result. And I think often the other thing that you encounter when you're in leadership roles is you also end up in more difficult situations as a whole than you might face otherwise, whether
Right.
that's just like interpersonal with other individuals you're working with or so on.
Yes.
Some of my friends have joked that I can be a drama magnet just because they're like, how did you end up in this situation with this club or organization? And then they're like, well, wait, this makes total sense. You're the one putting yourself out there more than anyone. You're being exposed to more situations where if 90% of them are perfect, and then there's going to be the 10% that aren't,
Yeah.
right? And along those lines, when I started my studies at Harvard Law School, we're placed into sections for the entire first year. So I took all of my classes with the same group of 80 people, and we had superlatives at the very end. And I received the designation of most involved. And I was here like, okay, I'm being deemed most involved at Harvard Law School. Is that a positive or is that a negative, right? I don't know if this is a compliment or not. But I think it's a combination of just one rejection, and then you encounter all these messy situations with clubs and organizations just as a result of the groups of people working together. Maybe people disagree on an issue or so on, and it's just I really believe in ethical leadership and just in making sure all sides are heard, trying to reach a compromise, but it can sometimes be hard to get there.
Yeah. Well, and you kind of, what's that saying? Hit the nail on the head when you said the more you're putting yourself out there, the more you're going to be subjected to using interpersonal skills. You're going to be in places where you're dealing with people coming from all different angles. And I would imagine, this is, I think it's a gift. When you were talking about trying to let all people be heard and find an amicable, I don't know what the exact word you said, but finding solutions, right? Which is what we like to do. It makes me think of Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I don't know if you read it, but he talks about in there. I always tell young people to read it. It's a really good book. It really, one of the chapters in there, he talks about the win-win. And he uses, and there's a video, you can actually look it up online, but he uses a video. It's an old, I mean, like this is an old thing where he spoke at. This guy's not even alive anymore, but he pulled a guy up on stage and they were going to do they were standing up and they were going to do like an arm wrestle. And he says, okay, we're going to do an arm wrestle. And so the guy gets ready to do it and he just folds his arm. And the guy's like, what the heck? And so then the guy goes back that way. And then so ultimately they keep doing this. And the whole point of this lesson was that when you give, other people are willing to give. Like, so, right, it's the give and take. Instead of buckling down and trying to fight, you learn to find a win-win situation. Does that happen every single time in life? No, but when people get to be heard, when all people, are having a perspective and people are listening, you have less resistance going back and forth. So listening to you talk about that, but then also just putting yourself into those leadership roles where, yes, you are going to be subjected to more situations where you're going to have adversity. And I always feel like I don't do anything like you, but people have told me that too, that I attract that kind of stuff too. And it's because whenever I'm in a situation, I always want to try to find the win. I want to try to figure out how to let everybody, even if we don't agree on everything, everybody at least walk away not hating each other at the end of that conversation, which is what happens in a lot of cases, right?
Definitely. And you just never know what will happen, right? I mean, especially with college and law school organizations, it can be messy. And then I will say I did graduate during the pandemic as well, which I think has also been a huge hurdle for my
Yeah.
generation. I lost the last bit of my junior year of college, my entire senior year, and then spent the next year basically at home doing law school apps and all these remote roles, but it's not the same as being able to graduate normally, have a normal graduation, have all these senior traditions, and then go into the workforce.
Right, right. And you've done remarkable despite that, because yeah, it was a tough time for, talk about the people outside, but yes, for the students, both in high schools and regular, in the K through 12, but also in the college. I mean, I had one kind of like you in the middle of that was off at college and everything, just the whole world froze and she was a cross country student, track student. So they shut everything down. That was kind of their lifeline, like that's why she went to school, was to run. She didn't care about school. She just wanted to be a runner, And so anyways, but yeah, you've done remarkable despite that. So I think it's incredible the work that you're doing and just in the leadership space, I think you're a good role model for other students looking to either, go into that space or that are currently in it right now. So I love it. Good stuff.
Thank you.
So community service work, I know you do some of that. Didn't I read you had a nonprofit or something? Did I read that you did something?
I've done a few things along those lines. I mean, for one, I mentioned I really do believe in giving back, especially to members of my ethnic group. So when I was at Columbia, I had launched a nonprofit initiative where at the time, I was serving as Armenian Club president at Columbia, and we actually had other Armenian societies across the country get involved, and we were having Armenian students send their essays and resumes and all these different things, and just giving them feedback on those materials for free,
The college
just
admission,
trying
yeah.
to get that help and support. Just because at any school I've been to, I'm one, if not two, of the Armenian students in my year, and we are a very small group, but it
Yeah.
would be really nice to have more people like me represented, just because I think as an ethnic group, we have a really unique past and history and culture,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to things like the Armenian genocide and how that influences just our like perception of society today. So,
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And actually I interviewed another Armenian. He's an adult now, but here's the funny thing about him. He has this crazy story. I feel like you need to listen to his episode because he has this crazy story where he fled home at like 17 because I think he was going to have to go into the military or something, and he left. And he tells this story about how he had to hide out, and then he ended up here and he got a mentor when he came to the States. And I can't remember like what happened in between, but then he went to California and started working there, met his wife. They live here now in Dallas, but they now have like a mental it's like they help families is what they do. They're like counselors. They have a whole counseling thing now where they help. The lady had gone into like something in California where she was working in the system with kids that were being like from broken homes or something. And so their whole mission is to help keep families together. And so they have a practice here, but he had such, I told him he needed to write a book. I'm like, you need to write a book. He was such a neat guy. His name's Rafi. I need to share his story with you so you can hear it, because you guys are such a small community, and he has this, like what you're talking about, the heritage. He has a really crazy story of like hiding out in the forest and like to get here and yeah. And he's older now, so he's like my age. He's got little kids and stuff, but he did all this when he was young, like I think 17 or 8, somewhere around there, right out of high school.
Yeah, that's great. Being Armenian has been a big part of my journey as well. What I will say is there's been a few different like cultural organizations. Every single time I've moved, it's been a community that's ready to welcome me, and I really don't take that for granted because it's nice when you move somewhere you've never been to before, having a community beyond school. And I made a real leap when I was 17. I grew up in a pretty small California suburb, or at least quiet California suburb. And I had been to New York one day in my life to tour Columbia University and really made that leap of, okay, I'm going to go here, move across the country, and basically go to the most hustling, bustling city
Yeah.
on the planet. Right? And it was definitely a huge adjustment. I had no idea what I was getting into, but I experienced so much self-growth as a result of that leap. And because of it, I really do encourage students, if they can, to try to go to school outside of state. I know that people have family circumstances and so on where
Yeah.
they can't do that, but I do think going outside that comfort zone was a huge aspect of my journey and really helped me become more familiar with New York City corporations and just become a lot more globally minded in general, because Columbia has the second highest international student body in the
Okay.
United States. So 1 out of every 5 undergraduate students is from abroad. And
Oh,
many of my friends to this day did not grow up in the United States. And for someone, again, who was from a California suburb, that was just such a shock to me. I'm like, whoa, I'm learning so much about the world just through my daily interactions with these people.
yeah.
And then now I get wedding invites in India and so on. So, and that never
Yeah, that's fun. No, and I agree. I mean, you're going, yeah, West Coast, East Coast, very different sides of the world. But no, I do think it's, I think my middle child likes to travel, and I'm a big, my little one went to Australia, or my oldest went to Australia when she was like 11 or 12. And I've always, even when they were in school, they were in a charter school. So they were around different cultures all the time growing up. And a lot of their friends are different from them. And I think it's great when you get exposure, because you do get to see other things and learn. And just going within the United States, yes, you can move around and it's very culturally different. Based, like we said, the East Coast, West Coast, the South. I mean, you've got very different things going on in all of the different places. So I can imagine that, yeah, just making that shift, in the beginning was like, wow, okay, it's different here. It's hustling and bustling and moving and I've never personally been to New York. My son was wanting to go there. He was on a work trip while, after he graduated, he got to travel a little bit. And that was one of the places they were going to get to go in, and they rerouted. And he was so disappointed because he didn't get to go to New York. So, yeah, I think, if you get an opportunity to be, get culturally aware and do some different things, I think, yeah, you should take it. And it's a good growing thing.
You need to make it out to New York, though. I will say it is my favorite city,
Is
and
it?
for that reason, I am going back after graduation. But I've just grown to love New York. I think that there's no other city like it where you can just be on the subway and start talking to the most interesting people. And I really think New Yorkers have a bad rep because I think that people are actually very friendly
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
very willing to strike up conversations. And there's always different events going on. You're never bored in New York, right? There's always something to do and something going on.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, because people here all the time ask me if I'm from East Coast. Like they'll ask me, are you from New York or New Jersey? I'm like, no, I have family that's East Coast, but I have lived in Texas my entire life. But I think Texas is, and I grew up in Houston in the city. I think it's a melting pot. So you got a lot of people there too. But I always get asked that question because I'm direct and I'm talk fast and I move fast. But I think mostly it's just because I'm direct. I'm like, I love when I meet New York people, I always have a fun time with them because they're direct. They just say what they got to say, which is good. For me, it's great because you don't have any ambiguity that way. You don't have to like read people's minds and do telepathy and all that stuff. It's like they just tell you. So, but no, I'm glad you're enjoying it and that you're thriving there. I think it's awesome that you're getting, the opportunity, but you've done the work. And I think that's the point here is that you didn't just waltz into this. You've done the work all the way up to the places that you've been now. And you're being able to, take the reward that's come from that, from all your discipline and dedication.
Absolutely. It's definitely started to pay off. I mean, I am at a very early stage of my journey though,
Right.
right? Because I haven't worked a full-time job yet. So
Right.
we're starting that new journey is starting next fall, but it has been a long time coming. It's really interesting looking at how many years of just kind of grinding it's taken to get to this
It's going
point.
to be fun to see what you do as you keep growing. And like, we're going to hear about you one day in something, you have some big case you're working on or something big that you're doing. Be like, we knew that girl when she was back in school and she was finishing up her law degree and doing all those things. But you're definitely, I mean, your track record is just remarkable. So I expect that you're going to continue to do the same cycle of, maybe different things in the world, right? Like not the same things, but you're going to continue to be doing amazing things and making a difference in your community and in your cultural stuff and all of that. So I'm excited to, kind of see where you go with all of this.
Definitely. And I think in that regard, even though I have been able to make it this far and I'm grateful for the opportunities, one of my major takeaways is you also want to be taking enough time to give back to the next generation. And I really do make
Right.
a point of that. And I think that's actually very unique for someone, at least at Harvard Law School. I don't know that many students who do it. I know of a few, but I really take the time to mentor younger students. And I actually speak to undergraduate pre-law clubs across the country, just trying to provide any application advice, answer any questions, just because as someone who did go into college, like, how do I get into law school? How does this work?
Yeah.
I know having 1 hour with someone who knows the process well and can tell you the main things makes such a difference,
Yeah.
especially in an area like law school admissions, which it's very GPA oriented, and a lot of students don't recognize that to the extent they're like, "Oh, I'm an engineer. They'll understand if my GPA is lower."
Right.
Not really.
No.
So having someone tell you early enough, "No, you need that GPA to be high. It just needs to be a high number." Little tweaks like that early on in the process can be game changing for someone.
Yeah. And that's good advice, by the way. So thank you for sharing that. Because my question was going to be, what advice would you be giving these young people? Let's say somebody coming out right now in high school and they're like, okay, I'm going to get into college. Like, what do I need to do? Anything you want to lend them other than GPA matters? You need to keep track of your GPA.
So for undergraduate admissions, it's a little more holistic. So in that regard, yes, you want the GPA, you want the SAT, ACT score, but you really want a strong track record of involvement as well as a strong narrative. So I always tell the students that I'm consulting, the first thing you want to do as a high school student trying to get into college is you pick what major you're applying with. And you can change that later, you can change it after you gain admission to the school, but we need to pick a major because you are going to then take the rest of your high school journey supporting that major and showing how you're dedicated to it. And then ultimately, when you apply and they're like, why do you want to be a math major? Oh, I've done all these math competitions, I'm president of math club, and so on. But unfortunately, we don't live in a day and age where being undecided is favored by admissions committees. You can be undecided. I know how hard it is to pick a life path, but at least for the admissions process, you want to really hone in, focus on an area, say you're dedicated to it, and then take it from there.
It's good. Yeah, I know that's good. And I was laughing your life path. Yeah, because it's funny. I was interviewing an attorney. I maybe shared this with you a few weeks ago. She was a federal trade, like she was in the same kind of maybe what you're kind of going. She was a litigator, but she was with the United Nations in the US and some kind of federal trade thing or something. Anyways, neat lady. But she's an ADHD. she has ADHD. And so she said that one of the things that was crazy for her is because she would go back and she'd have to spend hours reading these documents. And she said, my ADHD brain would go nuts reading all these documents. And I want to caveat this and say she wasn't a fast talker. She wasn't like all over the place in her dialogue. So you wouldn't have had any idea listening to her talk that she had ADHD. But she said reading those documents made her crazy. And so she left. That's what she went to school for, did the work and had an impressive career, and then left that to become basically a coach, an ADHD coach, and work with people. She said that what she started finding is in her practice, she really enjoyed the mentoring. She enjoyed coaching and mentoring people. And so her path kind of shifted. And so I think the beautiful thing about this is, yes, I think we get so set that, and I'm telling you this now because I went to school for something different. I went into accounting, and I do not do accounting. I'm not going to touch accounting because the idea of me sitting down and doing people's numbers all day would make me absolutely nuts at this stage of my life. But we have to pick a path, right? We had to pick a path. And the beautiful thing is, what I will say about this is, even whatever you study, even if down the road your path changes a little bit, all the life skills and all the knowledge you gained in the path that you were in will help you carry you into whatever you continue to do forward. So if at some point you go down the road and you're like, you know what, I'm done being an attorney, I want to go into some kind of community work, like community service or something, your leadership skills, everything you learned in that area of law are going to help you into that path just as importantly as they're doing right now. And so I believe there are no wrong paths. I think we just have to pick something that we feel passionate about. And yes, go into that area and do it. And if you love it, stick with it. But your life evolves. And as we age, our desires change, and our lives evolve. And that's the beautiful thing about this world and life that we get to live. We get to do that.
Definitely. And I will say I have loved that mentorship aspect, and it's really rewarding knowing that people are attributing a portion of their college journey to you.
Yeah.
I get some very lovely messages from my students who are very excited after gaining admission somewhere, and it's really heartwarming.
Yeah.
Right? And they'll hopefully they don't forget me. I mean, maybe they do. That's fine. They go off to college and it is what it is. But I've also just been able to meet so many different people through that type of career and being connected to so many different clients and their families. And it's really rewarding as well, being able to help eliminate a little bit of the stress, because my generation has it rough when it comes to just all the pressure that's being put on you. I would know it firsthand, just as someone who has these like high up goals and has been striving for years to reach where I am right now. But it's hard, right? So we have to give ourselves some grace, and then if we can be there for others, why not?
Exactly. I agree. And I think it's good. Okay. So one fun question I want to ask you: when you're not doing studies, and I have a feeling you're going to tell me you're what you're doing, because I think you love what you do. But when you're not doing studies, school, all those things, what does Danielle like to do for fun? Besides maybe reading, anything else?
I mainly just love hanging out with friends and exploring new cities. I've been to a lot of the major cities across the US. So this year alone, I went to Nashville for the first time. I went to Miami for the first time. And I really, again, do value those experiences where you're exposing yourself to more of the world, even if it's just in the US. So I think exploring different cities is a big one.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, I think it's just I do write poetry on the side. I would say that's another one, like having that type of creative pursuit. So I've been writing on the side for years, whether it's just articles for different Armenian news outlets or the poetry side. I actually was in a few creative writing workshops at Columbia and took it from there. I was part of a poetry mentorship program this past fall, and it was nice because I was able to get feedback on a few pieces, which again, I don't think I'm going to be a professional poet or anything, but it's a fun little side hobby.
And you need that. You definitely need that. You need to have creativity. It helps you in what you're doing. It'll help you in law. That's a beautiful thing. I think I tell people all the time, no, even though you have this serious thing going on over here, you need some kind of creative outlet as well, because creative expression really helps with ingenuity and industriousness and all the things that you need in the analytical side of your brain. So Definitely. I think it's great. I love it. So Danielle, this has been awesome. Like I said, I think you're doing some great stuff. I'm going to keep in touch with you so I can keep up with what you're doing. And I'm sure a lot of those people that you've helped are going to remember you. They're always going to remember that person helped me get into college or told me some things I needed to know. So I want to commend you on that. Let's say somebody listening to this wants to reach out to you. Maybe there's a parent that says, hey, I want my kid to hear this and listen to this story, and then this girl or dude says, hey, I want to get in touch with this Danielle and find out what she's got going on. Where do we send them? Where do you want us to send them to?
So they are welcome to contact me on LinkedIn. It's just my full name, as seen on this podcast, or you could email me. I will say my email is a little bit complicated. I blame Harvard Law for that, but it's dmikaelian at jd25.law.harvard.edu. I wish that was shorter, but don't
I
blame
know
me.
it's like the school. They always have like long names, so they make them so complicated. We'll make sure that when this gets in there, I'm going to connect with you in LinkedIn, but we'll make sure that when this gets connected, we put some links in there so people know how to reach out to you.
Okay, sounds great.
So thank you, Danielle. You are awesome. Keep doing your thing. I'm out there coughing. I'm like, no coughing. Keep doing your thing, and we appreciate you, your time, all the good stuff today.
Absolutely. And thank you again for having me on. This was a pleasure and I really enjoyed speaking.
Awesome. To our audience, if you found this episode informative and inspiring, we hope you did. Do all the things, hit the share, like, comment, get it out there so we can keep sharing all this fabulous content. And as I always say, in order to live the extraordinary, you must start. And every start begins with a decision. You guys take care, be safe, be kind to one another, and we will see you next time.